Oh, this is a good one. Today's biologic science news is particularly badass because it demonstrates both a potential medical breakthrough and the inherent value of biodiversity. Okay, so before we dive in, to really make sense of this, I need to briefly introduce two things. First of all, there's this creature called the Conus nux, or the nut cone. It's a species of predatory venomous sea snail that can be found near the Americas and the tropical regions of the eastern Pacific Ocean. The Conus nux sea snail uses its formidable conotoxins to induce painful stings, and this has two functions. These painful stings can make a potential predator think twice, maybe, I don't want to eat this sea snail, I'll find something that's less painful. And it can also be used to incapacitate prey, allowing the sea snail to move on top of the prey and begin eating it by scraping it apart with its radula into bite-sized ribbons of flesh. These conotoxins are really amazing. Of the more than 850 species of cone snails, they produce a wide variety of toxins that are characterized by hundreds of thousands of venomous exopeptides. Alright, and then the second thing that I need to introduce before we get into the science news today is about malaria. So the disease malaria is caused by infection with the Plasmodium microbe. The most dangerous form of malaria is caused by the amoeba strain Plasmodium falciparum. Upon infection of a host, the malaria pathogen can selectively invade hepatocytes or liver cells, and after some period of dormancy in the liver, the pathogen spreads into the bloodstream, where it can then infect red blood cells in a continuous cycle of infection, replication, and distribution. In order to get into the vasculature and infect the red blood cells, the pathogen first has to bind to certain membrane receptors on the outer surface of the capillary epithelial cells and of the red blood cells. This has two bad outcomes. It allows the Plasmodium pathogen to avoid immune cells in the spleen, and it damages red blood cells and reduces the body's ability to transport oxygen to tissues. Alright, so with that brief bit of background information, we can come to today's news. Researchers at Florida Atlantic University have identified a novel ability of the cone snail's conotoxins. When administered in medically safe doses, the conotoxins appear to be able to interfere with the Plasmodium cell's ability to bind to the membrane receptors on red blood cells. So that's really incredible. In medically safe doses, these conotoxins can potentially prevent malaria. To quote from the FAU press release about the research, the conotoxins can, quote, disrupt protein-protein and protein polysaccharide interactions that directly contribute to the disease, unquote. In effect, the conotoxin prevents Plasmodium from infecting red blood cells, which can potentially mitigate the emergence or the severity of malaria. Now, beyond malaria, this anti-adhesive property of the conotoxins holds promise for treating all kinds of diseases. In a section of the paper titled Biological Significance, the researchers write, quote, this study is the first of its kind, and it suggests that conotoxins can be developed as pharmacological tools for anti-adhesion adjunct therapy against malaria. Similarly, mitigation of emerging diseases like AIDS and COVID-19 can also benefit from conotoxins as potential inhibitors of protein-protein interactions as treatment, unquote. Dr. Andrew Olinikov, one of the leading authors of the paper, said, quote, molecular stability, small size, solubility, intravenous delivery, and no immunogenic response make conotoxins excellent blockade therapy candidates, unquote. He also said, quote, conotoxins have been vigorously studied for decades as molecular probes and drug leads targeting the central nervous system. They also should be explored for novel applications aimed to thwart amiss cellular responses or foil host-parasite interactions through their binding with endogenous and exogenous proteins. Further investigation is likely to yield breakthroughs in fields continuously toiling for more efficient therapeutic approaches such as cancer, autoimmune diseases, novel emerging viral diseases, as well as malaria, where venom-based peptidic natural products can be put into practice." Unquote. Alright, so that was a lot. That was a very detail-packed passage. To put it in simpler terms, Dr. Aleenikov is saying that these conotoxins have the ability to bind with certain receptor proteins, and this gives them the powerful capacity to regulate or inhibit these receptors from binding with other things, like invasive malaria-causing parasites. The medical potential here is incredible, with implications that go far beyond just malaria. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this research in the near future.